Chapter 887. Among all the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment cultivators, Rama was probably the youngest. Of course, compared to Shiyunzi, Rama was still a senior. In less than 10 years, the righteous path and demonic path had fought twice. Now, Shiyunzi was suggesting a third righteous path and demonic path. Faced with such shocking words, Luo Mo's expression didn't change at all. Looking at Shiyunzi, Rama said plainly, "Taoist Shiyunzi, please wait a moment. Such an important matter requires our Sabodhi monastery to give it further thought." After Shiyunzi left, Xiaomok walked in. His eyes were bloodshot, and he stared blankly in front of him, as if he had lost focus. "Can't you see the path ahead even with the eye of the heavens?" Rama asked. Xiaomok smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I can't. It's all fog. The heavenly secrets have been completely messed up. Karma and reincarnation. I can't see anything. I wanted to forcefully tear open the fog, but in the end, I paid with my eyes." Xiaomok didn't care that he had lost one eye. He was also at the true fire spirit refinement realm. His senses were very strong. In addition, he had the eye of the heavens secret technique. Losing a pair of eyes wasn't a big deal other than inconveniencing his daily life. He was more worried about the future of the Sabodhi monastery. He would never forget the scene of Chu Xiu destroying the Sabodhi monastery. He had thought that the matter would be over after Jingchan Jizang killed Chu Xiu. Unexpectedly, Chu Xiu didn't die. It was as if the heavens really wanted the Sabodhi monastery to be destroyed by Chu Xiu. "Abbot, what should we do about this? Should we join forces with the Chunyang Dao sect?" Rama looked at Xiaomok and said, "Do we have any other choice now? Karma and karma. What happened back then was the cause. Since it's already started, we can only bear the consequences. We have no choice. Inform the Temple of Great Light and see if they are interested. Inform all the Buddhist sects in the world that those who are willing to work with the Sabodhi monastery will gather at the Blue Dragon Society in a month." Xiaomok nodded and immediately went to inform the monks in Sabodhi monastery to make preparations. At the same time, he also told Shiyunzi about this news. The two sects of Taoism and Buddhism had officially joined forces and announced to the world that they were going to attack Chu Xiu. The moment both sides reached a consensus, this news was directly thrown into the underworld, and it immediately caused a huge uproar. The moon-worshipping cult's righteous path and devil path had only been fighting for a short period of time, but the Taoist and Buddhist lineages had joined hands to prepare for another righteous path and devil path war. However, this time their target was Chu Xiu, and of course, it could also be said to be the Yinma lineage. Even if the treatment given to Chu Xiu was not comparable to that of Yi Xiaonan, it was still comparable to that of the devil path that had been famous in the underworld for the past 500 years. Moreover, the commotion this time was not small. The Chunyang Dao sect, one of the three major Taoist sects, and the Sabodhi monastery of the North and South Buddhist sects had joined forces. They had also called upon all the Taoist and Buddhist sects in the world to attack together. This power was enough to make people breathless. Moreover, the Sabodhi monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect were extremely domineering when they attacked. They directly announced to the underworld that they were going to attack, and they even told you the time and date of the attack. They were open and above board, and they directly crushed you with force. Even if you tried to escape, they would dig you 3 feet into the ground to find you. There was no conspiracy or calculation. They just attacked directly, but there was no way to hide. This was also the usual style of the Sabodhi monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect. For a moment, the underworld surged. In the Temple of Great Light, the seats of the 6 major martial academies and the 3 major meditation halls gathered to discuss whether they should participate in this matter. In all fairness, the Temple of Great Light should go. Chu Xiu had also caused a lot of trouble in the northern Yan land, which made the Temple of Great Light very unhappy. However, previously, Chu Xiu had told the Temple of Great Light in detail about the Northern Yan Imperial Court's attitude. This also made the Temple of Great Light know that keeping Chu Xiu alive was actually keeping the Temple of Great Light as a buffer between the Northern Yan Imperial Court and the Temple of Great Light. The Northern Yan Imperial Court had wanted to attack the Temple of Great Light for a long time. With Chu Xiu around, the Temple of Great Light could feign civility. If Chu Xiu was not around, and someone else came, It might intensify the conflict. Therefore, this was also what the Temple of Great Light was conflicted about. Moreover, Su Si was still in seclusion, and the Temple of Great Light lacked a final decision-maker. At that moment, Su Du suddenly stood up. It's not good for the Temple of Great Light to go, but it's also not good if we don't go. So, I'll do it myself. Everyone present immediately looked at Su Du in confusion. He would go? They were all fellow disciples, who did not know each other. Su Du had never been reliable. Could it be that he had taken the initiative to volunteer at this time purely because he was tired of staying in the Temple of Great Light? Feeling everyone's gaze, Su Du immediately complained. I say, what do you all mean by this? Can you not always judge people by their old standards? I also know the importance of this. I am one of the first seats of the 3 major meditation halls. Isn't this status enough for me to go? When the time comes, if Chu Xiu really can't hold on anymore, I'll go and eradicate the demons and unorthodox doctrines, and earn some reputation for myself. If any accidents happen, I'll be responsible for smoothing things over. The worst-case scenario is that I'll be embarrassed, but it's better for me to be embarrassed than for you guys. A strange look appeared in everyone's eyes. They did not expect Su Du to be able to see through it so clearly. Among these people, Su Du was the most suitable. With his identity, he could attack and retreat as he pleased. Most importantly, Su Du's character was already well known. Even if he were to be embarrassed, it would not cause much damage to the reputation of the Temple of Great Light. In the end, Su Yin directly made a decision and let Su Du go. However, looking at Su Du's smug expression, people could not help but wonder if he insisted on going purely because he wanted to leave the temple for a trip. On the side of the real martial arts cult, Lu Chonglu directly rejected Chunyang Daosek's proposal. It was true that Lu Chonglu had taken part in the battle between the righteous and demonic path in moon-worshipping cult, but that time he did not stand on the side of the real martial arts cult, but on the side of the entire righteous path, so he had no choice but to take part. However, the matter between these two sects and Chu Xiu now seemed to be caused by personal grudges. It was better for the real martial arts cult not to get involved in this kind of matter, so as to avoid being implicated by karma. At Longhu Mountain, the Celestial Master Abode also received the news at almost the same time. The current ruler of Longhu Mountain was Immortal Imperial Sky, Zhang Daoling, who was also Zhang Qingzhen's father. This Immortal Imperial Sky was not too old. He was just over 50 years old this year. He looked elegant, and his character was upright and strict. He was slightly pedantic, but he did things in an orderly manner. Zhang Daoling had taken over the Celestial Master Abode for less than 10 years, but he had already managed the entire Celestial Master Abode in an orderly manner. Other than the important matters that required the old Celestial Master to speak, Zhang Daoling could decide everything by himself. His prestige in the Celestial Master Abode was also extremely high. Even people like Xian Longzi, whose strength was far beyond Zhang Daoling, had to respectfully call him senior brother when they met. For such a big matter like this, Zhang Daoling naturally did not dare to make a decision by himself, so he had to consult the old Celestial Master. In a thatched courtyard in the mountain behind the Celestial Master Abode, the old Celestial Master sat in the courtyard and basked in the sun. Beside him sat Xian Longzi and Zhang Qingzhen. Among them, Zhang Qingzhen was holding a Taoist scripture and discussing it with the old Celestial Master with a serious expression. Xian Longzi was peeling pine nuts at the side, and after peeling a pile, he placed them on the tea table beside the old Celestial Master. The treatment was like heaven and earth. Zhang Daoling stepped into the courtyard and bowed respectfully. He said in a deep voice, "Old Celestial Master, Chunyang Daosek sent news that they have joined forces with Sabodhi Monastery. They have called upon all the Buddhist and Taoist sects to encircle and annihilate Chu Xiu, and even attack the Yinma clan. Should the Celestial Master Abode participate in this matter?" The old Celestial Master laid comfortably on the chair and squinted his eyes. He said, "Do you think the Celestial Master Abode should participate?" Zhang Daoling pondered for a moment and said, "I think we should participate." The Celestial Master Abode did not participate in the moon-worshipping cult's righteous and demonic battle last time, because Yi Xiaonan made the first move. His strength was too great, and it was not advisable to fight head-on. But the strength of Chuxiao and the Yinma clan is far weaker than the moon-worshipping cult and Yi Xiaonan. If we succeed in this battle, it will increase the prestige of the Celestial Master abode. It is worth it. The old Celestial Master said slowly. Dao Ling, do you know why I can live to such an old age, and outlive all the old guys of my generation? Zhang Daoling thought for a moment and said, Is it because you have cultivated the Supreme Nine-Dragon Tiger Immortal Scripture to the extreme, and even integrated the Taoist secret scripture, the Great Scripture of Tao, into it, and reached a realm that surpasses the Celestial Master Abode's ancestral master? The old Celestial Master shook his head and said, Wrong. That is because I have never meddled in other people's business. Zhang Daoling's face showed a shocked expression. Xianlongzi, who was peeling pine nuts for the old Celestial Master, was secretly laughing at the side. The old Celestial Master flicked his finger, and a small bolt of lightning struck Xianlongzi's head, causing him to jump up in pain. The old Celestial Master glared at Xianlongzi and said coldly, Continue peeling pine nuts. Turning his head, the old Celestial Master said indifferently, Everyone says that the Celestial Master abode is the leader of Taoism, the leader of the righteous path. Don't take it seriously. Throughout history, regardless of the righteous path or the demonic path, the one who wants to be the leader never ends up well. The Kunlun Devil cult used to be the leader, but now it has been destroyed. The real martial arts sect used to be the leader, but they only had glory for a few decades. The Chunyang Dao sect is the descendant of Lu Zhu. They have been glorious for thousands of years, but they are getting worse with each generation. Don't get involved in these messy things. Do you think that your vision is far enough and that you can see the general situation of the entire Jianghu? In fact, as long as you understand your own territory, you will live longer than anyone else. Zhang Daoling was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, Yes, I understand. After that, Zhang Daoling left. The old Celestial Master turned to Zhang Qingjin and said, Everything about your father is good, but he is too inflexible. He doesn't know how to be flexible. Xianlongzi grinned and said, Old Celestial Master, you are speaking ill of someone's father in front of his son. That is not very nice. The old Celestial Master did not speak, but gently flicked his finger again. But this time, a purple heaven thunderbolt as thick as a water bucket came crashing down. Chapter 888. Chu Xiao also received the news when the pugilistic world was in turmoil. However, he didn't expect that the first trouble would not come from the outside world, but from his own side. To be more precise, it came from the Yinma clan. Previously, Chu Xiao had already understood the attitude of the entire Yinma clan. In the entire Yinma clan, apart from Wei Shuya's clan, probably only the phaseless demon sect would stand on Chu Xiao's side. As for the Crimson Demon sect, Yumoya, Wuma Hai and the others, they almost all remain neutral. The overall benefits of the Yinma clan weren't that attractive to them. However, there were still some people who not only didn't think about the benefits of the entire Yinma clan, but also wanted to gain benefits from the entire Yinma clan. When they found out that the Sabodhi Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect had joined forces with the Buddhist sects and Taoist sects to attack Chu Xiao, and even implicate the entire Yinma clan, several big shots of the Yinma clan came to the Blue Dragon Society to look for Chu Xiao. It was as if they were here to denounce him. They came of their own accord. When the news of Chu Xiao's death spread, it was Wei Shuya who informed them. In the meeting hall of the Blue Dragon Society, Wei Shuya sat gloomily. At the same time, there were two people sitting beside him. One of them was Qin Chaoxian from the Crimson Demon sect. He wasn't here to denounce them, but to mediate. In the past, the Crimson Demon sect was also one of the vassal sects of the Kunlun Devil cult. After the Kunlun Devil cult was destroyed, the Crimson Demon sect suffered a heavy blow. Later on, the Crimson Demon sect reduced the number of disciples and eliminated those with average talents. Those who could stay in the Crimson Demon sect were the elites of the elites. At the very least, there were less than 100 people. However, that was when the Crimson Demon sect was at its strongest. For so many years, the Scarlet Drill Devil sect had only focused on their own territory. In Wei Shuya's words, Qin Chaoxian and the entire Scarlet Drill Devil sect still had feelings for the Yinma clan. However, it was obvious that the Scarlet Drill Devil sect would definitely choose the latter when there was a conflict between the interests of the Yinma clan and their own sect. Now, seeing that the anger within the Hidden Devil clan was getting stronger and stronger, and there was even a trend of internal strife, although Qin Chaoxian did not intend to help, he planned to come over and mediate. Sitting on the other side of Wei Shuya was a man shrouded in a black robe. He wore a hood on his head, and his face was always shrouded in a layer of fog, making it difficult to see his appearance clearly, and it was impossible to tell his age. This person was the sect leader of the Faceless Devil sect, the Thousand-Faced Faceless Ren Qianqiu. This person's background and strength were extremely mysterious. Even Wei Shuya did not know much about them. However, this person had a great reputation in the Yinma clan. This was because this person had once destroyed the Nangong clan of the previous generation of the 9 great families with his own strength. Although Chu Xiu had destroyed many families, regardless of whether it was conspiracies or head-on confrontations, almost all of them ended with the word kill. However, Ren Qianqiu was different. He had displayed the secrets of the Faceless Devil sect to the extreme. He had changed his identity and lurked in the Nangong clan. As a guest military advisor, he had gained the attention of everyone in the Nangong clan. In a few years, he had led the Nangong clan from the bottom of the 9 great families to the middle of the 9 great families. Along the way, he had joined forces and provoked disputes between the 9 great families. If it was not for some accidents that caused the Shangshuaying clan to stop the expansion of the Nangong clan, and eventually let the other families join forces to destroy the Nangong clan, Ren Qianqiu might really have been able to stir up a storm in the Jianghu with his own strength. Even in the end, the people of the Nangong clan did not find anything wrong with him. When the Nangong clan was destroyed, they still protected Ren Qianqiu and wanted him to avenge the Nangong clan. Ren Qianqiu came here to discuss the countermeasures with Chu Xiu and to support Chu Xiu and Wei Shuya. At this moment, standing in front of Chu Xiu were 3 big shots in the true fire spirit refinement realm of the Yinma clan. In the past, Chu Xiu had only vaguely heard their voices. This was the first time he had seen them face to face. Chu Wuji stood behind Chu Xiu and introduced them to him in a low voice. "Do you see that old man with a dead face who was just dug out of the graveyard? He was the sect master of the Ghost Underworld sect, Situchi. His Ghost Underworld sect was not ranked in the Kunlun Devil cult, and the ancestors of the Ghost Underworld sect were only in the true fire spirit refinement realm. There were less than 10 people in the entire Ghost Underworld sect, and they were struggling at death's door. However, this old man had recently taken in a talented disciple, and he was showing off. There was also an old woman in a blood-colored robe with a red lotus on her head. Her name was Li Jiaodi, and she claimed to be the successor of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. In fact, she was just a young mistress of a poor family. She had accidentally obtained a little bit of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance, which was why she had embarked on the evil path. At her current cultivation level, she probably had less than 10% of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance. How could she be called a successor? This woman had been dumped by a man a long time ago, so she was extreme in her actions and had a sharp and unkind personality. In the entire Inemo clan, no one liked her. If it wasn't for the fact that she had the strength of the true fire spirit refinement realm, and that the Inemo clan was indeed lacking people, they wouldn't even accept this kind of person into the Inemo clan. The last old man, who was dressed like an opera singer and didn't look like someone from the Central Plains, was the fire demon venerable, Kun Mo. He was the successor of a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult, in the far west desert of the Kunlun Devil cult. However, that branch was once destroyed by those bastards from the Rakshasa sect. The others fought to the end, but Kun Mo's ancestor abandoned his fellow sect members and ran away. Those who are not of the same clan are definitely not of the same mind. Those outsiders are just unreliable. After listening to Chu Wuji's introduction, there were only 2 words in Chu Xiu's mind: scattered sand. This was the current state of the Hidden Devil clan. Only a few people, like Wei Shuya, really contributed. The others only focused on their own interests. What difference did it make if this group of people was present or not? There were so many true fire spirit refinement realm, and so many martial Dao grandmasters in the Hidden Devil clan. Although they weren't weak, they couldn't even exert 1/10 of their strength in a real fight. Now it seemed that Chu Xiu had overestimated them. Not to mention exerting their strength, they had already developed to the extent of being a hindrance. Wei Shuya said lightly, "What do you guys want by coming here? To help us deal with the Sabodhi Monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect?" Situ Chi was the first to stand up and said, "Elder Wei, you must be joking. The Hidden Devil clan has enough troubles now. If we rush forward, we'll be sending the entire Hidden Devil clan to their graves." Wei Shuya didn't even look up and said lightly, "Sending the Hidden Devil clan to their graves? This old man has lived for so many years. What kind of storms and waves have I not seen? In the past, situations that were even more severe than this have appeared, and the Yinma clan has not been destroyed. Could it be that I can't even get through this little trouble?" Li Jiaodi said loudly, "Elder Wei, even if the Hidden Devil clan can survive this time, can you guarantee that no one will continue to cause trouble next time? It was originally a good thing that Chu Xiu escaped from Jingchan Jizang, but why did he provoke the Chunyang Dao sect? That was the head of the Heavenly Dipper Hall's 6 guardians. Chu Xiu killed him just like that. Do you think you're Patriarch Dugu?" In all fairness, Li Jiaodi's appearance was actually not bad. Although she was a little older, it could be seen that she was also a beauty when she was young. However, her eyebrows were sharp, and her lips were thin and curled up. She was born with such a mean appearance, and her words were even more unpleasant. It was no wonder that she was dumped by a man. In the end, Kunmo didn't say much. He just said lightly in a somewhat clumsy Central Plains Chinese, "Elder Wei, the Hidden Devil clan has always been more than one person. Next time there's such a big matter, can you discuss it with us?" Wei Shuya's expression didn't change. He just looked at Chu Xiu, who was sitting at the head of the table. He gently raised his eyebrows and said, "They're here for you. Say a few words." Qin Chaoxian, who was at the side, was a little uneasy. Although he didn't have much contact with Chu Xiu, he also understood his character. He was absolutely unyielding, and there was no such thing as giving in. If Situ Chi and the others had spoken tactfully, it would have been fine. But now they had come to denounce Chu Xiu. They were almost brazenly saying that Chu Xiu had implicated them and the entire Hidden Devil clan. However, before Qin Chaoxian could come forward to persuade them, Chu Xiu had already stood up. He looked at the 3 people in front of him and said lightly, "Are you all done?" The 3 people looked at each other, not knowing what Chu Xiu meant. Pointing to the door, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Since you're all done, then get out of here." Hearing this, Qin Chaoxian immediately felt that something was wrong, while Situ Chi and the others all exploded. They were all existences in the true fire spirit refinement realm, the big shots of the Hidden Devil clan. Usually, no matter which family's juniors met them, they would all be respectful. Who would dare to be rude to them in front of them? Situ Chi, "How dare you?" Li Jiaodi, "How dare you?" Kunmo, and #and*. A series of Western region words were spat out. Although no one understood them, they were obviously not good words. Looking at the people present, Chu Xiu said coldly, "I've given you face, but you really think you're some kind of senior expert? Do you think you're qualified to represent the entire Hidden Devil clan? In the past, the 9 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountains were the orthodox of the devil path, and Mr. Run of the phaseless demon sect was also the orthodox of the holy sect. Who do you think you are? I've given you some face, but you still dare to open a dye shop in front of me. You don't know what you're talking about." Chu Xiu looked at the 3 people below and said coldly, "If the Subhoodie Zen Monastery attacks, I'll take care of it. If the Chunyang Dao sect attacks, I'll take care of it too. If you want to die, go far away. If you dare to talk nonsense in front of me again, do you believe that I won't kill you as a sacrifice? It's not like I haven't killed people in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Zhang Yunzi just died in my hands. Do you dare to try and see if Zhang Yunzi's skull is hard, or if your heads are iron?" Chapter 889. Chu Xiu's attitude could no longer be considered tough. He simply didn't take Situ Chi and the others seriously. Of course, this was indeed the case. Now Chu Xiu had the qualifications to look down on them. In the past, Chu Xiu gave them face, not only because he was a junior in the Inma clan, but also because he needed to rely on the Inma clan to gain a foothold in Jianghu. But now? As Chu Xiu said, these three people were just poor people. Did they have the qualifications to bark in front of him? At present, Chu Xiu had the entire Blue Dragon Society, the Zhenwu Hall, the Guanzhong Torture Room, and Luo Feiheng's 9-branch hall. These forces all listened to Chu Xiu's command. With such powerful forces added together, except for those who stood at the peak of Jianghu, who dared not challenge Chu Xiu. Situqi's so-called ghost underworld sect only had 2 or 3 people, and Li Jiaodi was alone. It was said that Kunmo had a few disciples, but not many. With such a force, they dared to stand in front of Chu Xiu and talk to him. They simply didn't know what they were doing. At this moment, Situqi and the other 2 were fuming with rage. They were all seniors in Jianghu. In terms of seniority, which one of them wasn't above Chu Xiu? However, this Chu Xiu dared to humiliate them like this. He was simply courting death. However, before they could say anything, Qin Chaoxian immediately stood up and consoled them one by one. Everyone calm down. My Inma clan has already suffered so many disasters. Others haven't even come to our door, and we are already fighting among ourselves. We can only let others see us as a joke. Qin Chaoxian said to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu, don't blame Situqi and the others for being rude. People of the Inma clan always speak like this. They are all straightforward. In fact, they are also thinking of the Inma clan. They have no malice. Qin Chaoxian turned around and said to Situqi and the others, I know you are all thinking of the Inma clan, but now Sabodhi Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect have come to our door. It has already happened. It is too late to say anything. Although he said this, Qin Chaoxian secretly transmitted his voice to the 3 of them. The 3 of you, it's unwise for you to provoke Chu Xiu now. I heard that the divine monk Rama has already taken action. I am afraid that Chu Xiu will not be able to resist this time. He can be reborn in the hands of the true fire spirit refinement realm, but can he be reborn in the hands of the heaven and earth metaphysic realm experts? To put it bluntly, I am afraid that Chu Xiu will not be able to survive this calamity. Because of this, if you provoke Chu Xiu at this time, it will only make him more crazy. The 3 of you. I am doing this for your own good. You did not see how Chu Xiu fought Jingchan Jizang to death. They were really 2 madmen who did not care about their lives and dragged each other down with them. He is about to die. Do you think he will still care about the rules of the Inma clan, and things like seniority? I advise you to not meddle in these matters as soon as possible. Know when to stop. We can talk about other things later. Hearing Qin Chaoxian's words, the expressions of the 3 people present changed slightly. It had to be said that nothing was more useful than direct threats of force. Chu Xiu was powerful. It was a publicly acknowledged fact that he could fight in existence at the true fire spirit refinement realm to death. Moreover, Chu Xiu's craziness was also publicly acknowledged. With these 2 things together, in addition to Qin Chaoxian's words, they were really worried that Chu Xiu would sacrifice them in his madness. Therefore, the 3 of them did not even say anything harsh in the end. They immediately turned around and left dejectedly. Qin Chaoxian did not know what to say at this moment. He only cupped his hands at everyone present and turned to leave. Wei Shuya raised his head and let out a long sigh. His tone contained feelings of helplessness, disappointment, and so on. At this moment, Rin Qianqiu said, Elder Wei, you don't have to worry about such trash. If the sect master were to rebuild the sacred sect in the future, he would not even take a liking to them. The Inma clan that you painstakingly maintained is actually not valued by them at all. What Chu said just now was very true. They are just a group of impoverished people. Do they really think that they are important? Rin Qianqiu's voice was very magnetic and gave people a very comfortable feeling. At the same time, his tone also contained a trace of arrogance. Although the phaseless demon sect was not considered a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult, it was one of the many vassal sects that had the closest relationship with the Kunlun devil cult. At its peak, the phaseless demon sect even had 3 demon envoys of the Kunlun devil cult at the same time. Although the position of demon envoys was only a title and could not command the direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult, it also represented the attitude of the Kunlun devil cult, an attitude that recognized you. Compared to the phaseless demon sect, the three people were standard impoverished people. Wei Shuya sighed again and said, "But this also proves that I is incompetent. After so many years, the entire hidden devil lineage has become like this." Chu Xiu also said, "No, this just proves your ability, old Wei. Without you, I am afraid that the hidden devil lineage would have fallen apart a long time ago." Wei Shuya waved his hand and said, "All right, let's not talk so much for now. Chu Xiu brat, they have already fought their way to our door. Have you arranged everything?" A trace of sharpness flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he said, "The arrangements are almost done. This time, I invited Sect Hedron here because I want to trouble the phaseless demon sect to take action." Ren Qianli said, "Chu, you don't have to be polite. You are the person who obtained the sect head's inheritance, so naturally, you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. It doesn't matter if Situchi and the others live or die, but if something happens to you, the phaseless demon sect will not ignore it, Chu. Right now, the various branches of the phaseless demon sect in Eastern Qi have gathered and are ready to resist the attack of the Subhuti Monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect at any time." Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "It is such a waste for the phaseless demon sect to use such a powerful force to defend. Why can they attack me, but I can't attack them? The battlefield of the phaseless demon sect is not at the Eastern Qi. Then where is it? The old lair of the Subhuti Monastery in the southern barbarian land." A trace of sharpness appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes as he said, "Although we are currently at a disadvantage in terms of strength, it is not my style to sit still and wait for death. Attack with attack, kill to stop killing. I want to see who will be the first to give up." Just when Chu Xiu had almost arranged everything, the Subhuti Monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect had already made their move. In fact, the speed of these two sects could be faster, but with the edict of the two sects, all the people in the entire Jianghu from the Taoist sects and the Buddhist sects were all mobilized. This number was extremely astonishing. In the Jianghu, there were not only the three major Taoist sects and the Buddhist sections. The mainstream cultivation system in the entire Jianghu was actually the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Demon. Although there were few big sects, some medium-sized sects, small sects, and a group of rogue martial artists, their number was extremely astonishing. Therefore, under the edict, countless martial artists from the Taoist sects and Buddhist sects gathered in the Eastern Qi, ready to completely strangle Chu Xiu, the evil demon, with one blow. Maybe they could also destroy the entire Hidden Devil clan. Outside the barren mountain at the junction of Eastern Qi and Western Chu, tens of thousands of martial artists gathered here. A portion of them were people from the Taoist and Buddhist sects, while the rest were here to watch the show. In less than a decade, the Jianghu had consecutively experienced three great battles between the orthodox and the demonic. Although the scale of this battle was not as large as the one at the moon-worshipping cult, it was not small either. In the middle of the crowd was a large tent. The martial artists from the Subhuti Monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect, as well as Su Du from the Great Light Temple, were all here. Besides them, there were also a few monks and Taoist priests present. They were all rogue martial artists or seniors from the Taoist and Buddhist sects who came from small temples or Taoist temples. Although they did not reveal themselves most of the time, at this time, after receiving the edict, their strength was shocking. When they joined forces, they were not weaker than the top big sections. However, due to various reasons, they did not like to enter the big sects to cultivate. They would rather live a leisurely life. They would only take action when something major that concerned the Taoist and Buddhist sects happened. In the past, Ling Yunzi had not been out of the Chunyang Dao sect for a long time, so he was dressed rather sloppily. At the moment, his grayish-white hair was meticulously combed, and the golden Tai Chi Taoist robe he wore was dazzling. He looked like an immortal, but the sharp aura he had when he was younger was nowhere to be seen. Chunyang Dao sect's ancestral divine weapon, Pure Yang, was not in Ling Yunzi's hands, but in Shi Yunzi's. This divine weapon was very strange. Ordinary people could not use it at all. Although Ling Yunzi could use it, he could only barely. This divine weapon was extremely compatible with Shi Yunzi, so Pure Yang had always been with Shi Yunzi. Ling Yunzi said in a deep voice, "Abbot Rama, almost everyone is here. As for how we should act, we need to have a plan." This was a rare occasion for the Taoist and Buddhist sects to work together. However, before they could act, they were also facing problems internally. The Taoist and Buddhist sects could not coexist. Previously, because of their orthodoxies, the Taoist and Buddhist sects had many conflicts. Now that the two sects were working together, not only were the Sabodhi Zen monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect not used to it, but the martial artists who had come after hearing the imperial edict were also not used to it. Therefore, before they could act, they had already started fighting among themselves. Fortunately, as people in charge, Rama and Ling Yunzi were sensible people. They would not fight for power at such a time. Rama was very strong, and the other party was also a figure on the sovereign list. Therefore, Ling Yunzi was willing to give the command to the other party. Rama didn't shirk the responsibility. He took out a map and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Azure Dragon Association is surrounded by spell formations. Ordinary people won't be able to enter. Furthermore, I suspect that Chu Xiu has set up a large number of killing formations in the maze. Therefore, everyone from the Taoist sects will be the first to break the formation. The Buddhist disciples will stand guard at the side. We have never worked together before, so there is no need to force ourselves to work together. After breaking the formation, we will fight on our own. This is actually more reliable than arranging a formation." Just as Ling Yunzi was about to nod in agreement, a loud and clear voice suddenly resounded for several miles. "Those who come are guests. Breaking the door is disgraceful. The door has already been opened for everyone. Whether you dare to enter or not is up to you." Chapter 890. Chu Xiu's voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The maze that the Blue Dragon Society had set up actually disappeared on its own, revealing the Blue Dragon Society's iconic palace that resembled a majestic azure dragon emerging from the sea. Luo Emo and Ling Yunzi looked at each other with a hint of astonishment in their eyes. Chu Xiu had actually taken the initiative to open the maze. Was he really prepared to fight them fair and square? Where did he get his confidence from? The moon-worshipping church would not make a move this time. Moreover, Yi Xiaonan was currently in seclusion. Apart from Yi Xiaonan, it would be useless for anyone else from the moon-worshipping church to make a move. Ling Yunzi looked at Rama. "Abbot Rama, since they have already come forward to invite us, what about us?" A faint smile appeared on Rama's lips. Of course, it would be impolite to refuse. As Ling Yunzi and Rama's orders were passed down, tens of thousands of people directly surged towards the Blue Dragon Society. The Blue Dragon Society, which had been sealed off for countless years, was now revealed to everyone for the first time. However, it was in such a way. In front of the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu's blood-red robe fluttered in the wind. Facing the tens of thousands of martial artists from the Buddhist and Taoist lineages, Chu Xiu's expression did not change. Instead, he took the initiative to greet them. "I never thought that there would be a day where I, Chu Xiu, would receive such treatment. It seems that everyone can't wait to kill me, Chu Xiu, one day." There were actually more martial artists watching the battle than the martial artists from the Buddhist and Taoist lineages. Seeing Chu Xiu's appearance, they had to admit that, at least in terms of temperament, Chu Xiu was really worthy of his current reputation. He already had the bearing of a big shot in the demonic path. If it were anyone else, they would either be afraid and flee in panic, or they would completely fall into hysterical madness. There were very few people who could be as calm as Chu Xiu. Ling Yunzi looked behind Chu Xiu. His expression was a little strange. He felt that something was wrong. Behind Chu Xiu was Wei Shuya, one of the 5 great sky fiends of the 9th Heaven Mountain. He also had Chu Xiu's good friend, Lu Fengxian, who had inherited the legacy of the devil god Lv1Ho and was quite famous among the younger generation. There were also some people from the northern Yanjinwu Hall and Guanzhong Torture Room, as well as people from the 9-branch hall, under Chu Xiu's good friend Luo Feiheng. In total, there were more than 10,000 of them. But to be honest, compared to the elites of the Chunyang Dao sect, Sabodhi Monastery, and the Taoist and Buddhist sects, Chu Xiu's subordinates could only be described as a motley crew. How could Chu Xiu resist the joint attack of Taoism and Buddhism just by relying on this motley crew? Had he already given up? At that moment, Rama said softly, "It's not that I want to kill you. But you already expected this day to come, didn't you? You can still be reborn after your body is shattered. This kind of mystic technique is described in some ancient books. I believe that it should be very easy for you to change to a new identity when your body is reconstructed. Chu Xiu is the enemy of the pugilistic world. You should know how much karma you are carrying. Jingchan Jizang killed you, but he also severed the karma on you. Unfortunately, you gave up this opportunity and killed Zhang Yunzi. You have to bear this karma again. What Rama said was actually something that most people in the pugilistic world were puzzled about. Although reconstructing one's body was a little shocking, it was not unheard of. When everyone thought that Chu Xiu was dead, Chu Xiu could totally change his identity and step into the pugilistic world openly. Unfortunately, he did not choose to do so. To others, it was not a wise choice. Looking up at the sky, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Master Rama is right. I do have another choice. It's not that I can't choose, but I don't want to choose. What exactly is a person living for? Some people serve Buddha for life. Some people study Taoist scriptures to seek the great Tao of the world." Chu Xiu pointed at himself and said, "In this life I, Chu Xiu, only live for myself." Chu Xiu's Chu Xiu Xiu. Chu Xiu's words were not only said to Rama, but also to everyone present. It was also said to the existence in the dark. Regardless of whether he was Lin Yi from his previous life or whether he had some confusing connection with Duge Weiwei, he Chu Xiu was Chu Xiu now. He could only be Chu Xiu. Rama gently raised his eyebrows. This legendary divine monk's every move seemed to have a kind of magical Buddha nature, which moved people's hearts and souls. However, I'm very curious. What are you going to use to stop me today? You can't win against the mysterious heaven and earth. Rama's tone was not arrogant. He was only stating a fact. The fact that Chu Xiu could fight Jingchan Jizang to death and kill Zhang Yunzi was enough to prove Chu Xiu's strength. However, the mysterious heaven and earth and the true fire spirit refinement realm had always been two different realms. The former was already a supreme existence that stood at the peak of the pugilistic world. Chu Xiu lightly said, "It's true that I can't defeat you, Master Rama. Therefore, your opponent today is not me." As he said that, Chu Xiu shouted behind him, "City Master Shang, stop eating. It's your turn." Shang Tianliang was wearing a brand new black and gold robe. However, he was still holding a roasted chicken in his hand. He kept chewing on it and swallowed it in a few bites. He even wiped his greasy hands on his robe. He did not look like a powerhouse at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. He looked like an old man that was about to starve to death. In reality, that was indeed the case. What was the mysterious heaven and earth realm in a place like Lidu that was like hell on earth? T. The black storm would not let you go just because you were at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Apart from being slightly stronger, Shang Tianliang was no different from anyone else. Other than thinking about how to live, he also had to think about how to let the people in Merchant City live. After coming here, Shang Tianliang knew that he was here to be a fighter, so he did not ask any questions. He had been eating and drinking for the past few days. In fact, Shang Tianliang was not only eating and drinking to satisfy his insatiable appetite. He also wanted to recover some primordial qi. Although Shang Tianliang was at the mysterious heaven and earth realm, he had been staying in a place like Lidu for a long time. His true qi could not be replenished. Some parts of his body had been damaged, and even his meridians had withered. While he was eating and drinking, Shang Tianliang was also relying on the essence qi in the food to repair the flaws in his body. He did not waste any time. The people around him had strange expressions. Was Chu Xiu going to rely on this old man to resist divine monk Rama? He must have lost his mind, right? Everyone looked like they were watching a joke. Only Rama frowned. After a while he said in a deep voice, "I don't know you." The others could not see anything wrong with Shang Tianliang. Although Shang Tianliang did not have to worry about the consumption of true qi in the outside world, he still subconsciously restrained the true qi in his body. However, Rama, who was also at the mysterious heaven and earth realm, could see Shang Tianliang's background. There were only a few mysterious heaven and earth realms in the pugilistic world. Even if there were some old monsters who had not appeared in the pugilistic world for decades, Rama could not match up to him. Shang Tianliang grinned and said, I don't know you either. Are you a monk? Interesting. Very interesting. There might be people who practice Buddhist martial arts in Ludu, but there were definitely no monks. When everyone opened their eyes, they did not know if they could see the sun tomorrow. You go and tell people that all lives are equal and the Buddha is merciful? Go to hell. You would definitely be beaten to death on the spot. Therefore, Shang Tianliang really felt that the profession of being a monk was very interesting. However, he did not say much to Rama because he knew that he was here to be a fighter. Since he was going to be a fighter, he did not care about anything else. There was only one word: fight. As Shang Tianliang's voice fell, the ground under his feet cracked. His body was like a cannonball as he blasted straight at Rama. Using his palm as a knife, in the next moment, a majestic knife energy condensed around Shang Tianliang. It was as if his entire body had become a knife. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was absorbed around his body. From afar, one could not see Shang Tianliang's figure at all. One could only see the huge knife light slashing towards Rama. Rama chanted, and a strange and profound syllable was uttered. In the next moment, a golden light flashed in front of him. Shang Tianliang's blade slashed on the light screen, and all the light from the blade was absorbed by it. Break! Shang Tianliang shouted in a low voice. His hands tore apart. Powerful spiritual energy of heaven and earth erupted from his hands, and directly tore the light screen apart. He stepped forward and punched. A majestic spiritual energy of heaven and earth poured into Shang Tianliang's body, causing his punch to be like a spear that could shatter the sky. It was incomparably sharp and extraordinary. In Ludu, Shang Tianliang was in existence at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Not only could he not use too much spiritual energy, he could not even use a trace of the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Now that he was in the outside world, Shang Tianliang finally understood what true power was. This was the power of the Shang ancestors as described in the ancient books. This was also the power realm that he should be at. In Ludu, Shang Tianliang did not like to fight. It should be said that every person in Ludu did not like to fight. However, their killing intent and killing intent were stronger than anyone else's. This was because it was not a battle, but a life of life and death. However, after fighting with Rama this time, Shang Tianliang understood what true fighting intent was. Facing the spear that seemed like it could pierce through the sky, Rama used the flower-picking seal. The seemingly weak Buddhist seal caused the huge spear that Shang Tianliang had condensed to start shattering. Rama gently tapped Shang Tianliang's fist with a finger. However, Shang Tianliang's entire body was blasted away. He smashed into the ground and created a huge pit that was more than 30 meters wide. The Buddha used the flower-picking seal. All the magical powers were hidden in silence. Although Rama seemed to have blasted Shang Tianliang away easily, in the next moment, Shang Tianliang had already climbed out of the pit. He was not injured at all. He even shouted, "Awesome!" In the next moment, his figure appeared in front of Rama again. His hands were like dragon claws that tore through everything. He continued to attack Rama. Chapter 891. In the fight between Shang Tianliang and Luo Mo, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Luo Mo had the absolute advantage. Moreover, in the green dew space, Shang Tianliang had not even fought with people of the same realm. After all, there were only 2 or 3 people who could reach the mysterious realm in that place, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Even when fighting with Luo Mo, Shang Tianliang was filled with an extremely uncomfortable feeling. This was the first time he had fought in a place with such an abundance of heaven and earth essence. This made it extremely difficult for him to unleash his strength. Therefore, everyone could only see that every time Shang Tianliang charged forward with an extraordinary aura, he would be sent flying by Luo Mo. However, as the fight went on, Luo Mo frowned slightly. This existence in the mysterious realm in front of him was very strange. His opponent's martial art skills were extremely shaky, and his fighting style was also extremely strange. In any case, he was not considered strong. At least, among all the mysterious realm experts that Luo Mo knew, this person's strength should be the lowest. However, there was one thing that was extremely difficult to deal with, and that was that he was very resistant to beatings. That's right. Compared to Luo Mo and the other mysterious realm experts, Shang Tianliang's only advantage was his resistance to beatings. In a place like Green Dew, Shang Tianliang had constantly tempered his body. It could be said that even if he did not deliberately cultivate a body-refining technique, in terms of the strength of his body, not many people could surpass Shang Tianliang. In addition, Shang Tianliang's willpower and physique had been tempered in an extremely harsh environment. Even though Shang Tianliang's combat strength was much lower than Luo Mo's, it was still impossible for Luo Mo to defeat Shang Tianliang in a short period of time. At that moment, among the spectators, there were two people looking at Shang Tianliang in shock. These two people were Eastern Qi's LV Zhanlu and White Tiger Hall's Helian Changfeng. LV Zhanlu even shouted in a low voice, "Lunatic! Chu Xiu is a lunatic." Others might not know Shang Tianliang, but LV Zhanlu and Helian Changfeng knew him. They never thought that Chu Xiu would actually be able to enter that place again and bring out the people from that space. The last time they entered Green City, they were just passers-by. They didn't carefully investigate Green City's roots like Chu Xiu did. However, they were able to guess that none of those who were able to grow up in an extremely adverse environment like Green City were easy to deal with. Once this group of people escaped, the sudden appearance of such a force would definitely be a huge blow to the current Jianghu. Chu Xiu was definitely a madman. For his own benefit, what else could he not do? When the other Taoist and Buddhist cultivators saw how intense the fight between Rama and Shang Tianliang was, they roared and wanted to start the fight immediately. Ling Yunzi sighed and waved his hand. The people of Chunyang Dao sect immediately quietened down. Looking at Chu Xiu, Ling Yunzi said in a low voice, "Actually, I don't like senior brother Zhang Yunzi, because he is too strict. I remember when we were young, senior brother Zhang Yunzi was in charge of watching over us when we were writing Dao scriptures from memory. If we made a mistake, we would get hit with a board. Later on, I became the sect leader of Chunyang Dao sect, and my status was finally higher than senior brother Zhang Yunzi's. However, I still don't like him because he represents the most paranoid and decadent side of Chunyang Dao sect." The other disciples of Chunyang Dao sect looked at each other. They didn't know why the sect leader would criticize their own people in front of Chu Xiu. However, Ling Yunzi changed the topic. He slowly pulled out the Dao sword that was flickering with pure yang qi and said in a low voice, "However, senior brother Zhang Yunzi is senior brother Zhang Yunzi after all. He is my senior brother and the leader of the 6 spiritual masters of Tiangang Hall of Chunyang Dao sect. You should know how the entire Chunyang Dao sect will react after you kill him. Sometimes, there is no right or wrong in the pugilistic world. Only what should be done and what should not be done. I haven't been out in the pugilistic world for decades. Today, I want to see what the young heroes who stand at the peak of the pugilistic world look like. I want to see if there are really talented people in every generation, and the new generation surpasses the old." As Ling Yunzi's voice fell, the glaring pure yang qi around him rose into the air. It was as if he had returned to the days when he was young, when he had destroyed a large devil sect with his own strength. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes, and also took out the heavenly war case. With a slight sound of gears, the heavenly war case instantly turned into the peerless heavenly saber. Ling Yunzi was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's expectations. In his imagination, Chu Xiu thought that Ling Yunzi should be the same kind of person as Zhang Yunzi. However, when he saw Ling Yunzi, Chu Xiu realized that he was wrong. The other party was not Zhang Yunzi, but a person who understood. He knew where the real shortcomings of Chunyang Dao sect were, but he couldn't change it. That was because in the entire Chunyang Dao sect, the powerful people were all stubborn and rotten like Zhang Yunzi. Not only could he not change Chunyang Dao sect, but he also had to follow the rules of Chunyang Dao sect. For example, today as the sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, he had to stand here and fight with Chu Xiu. Otherwise, Chunyang Dao sect would definitely fall into more internal strife because of personal feelings. Just as Ling Yunzi said, for Ling Yunzi, there was no right or wrong in this battle. There was only what should be done and what shouldn't be done. The situation had already reached this point, and it was too late for both sides to retreat. Therefore, while holding the peerless heavenly saber, Chu Xiu only spat out one word: kill. As soon as he said that, Wei Shuya and the others behind Chu Xiu all rushed out. At that moment, The internal array of the Blue Dragon Society had already been activated. Green radiance circulated, and with a dragon's roar, the green brilliance struck down like thunder. A unity of heaven and man realm martial artist who couldn't dodge in time was directly vaporized by the green radiance, leaving not even a trace behind. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. None of them could have imagined that the Azure Dragon Society's spell formation would be this powerful. At this moment, everyone recalled the roots of the Blue Dragon Society. It was a part of the Four Symbols sect in the past, and the place where the Blue Dragon Society was located was the ruins of the Four Symbols sect in the past. Since ancient times, when it came to array Dao, if the Black Tortoise branch of the Four Symbols sect claimed to be the best, no one would dare to say that they were second. After the great calamity of the ancient times, the array at the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society had actually been almost destroyed. Thankfully, the forefathers of the Azure Dragon Society were far-sighted. They invited the Formation Dao Grandmasters of the Black Tortoise Society to repair the Azure Dragon Society's formations. After several generations of effort, they were finally able to restore the Azure Dragon Society's formations to their former glory days. Among the four spirits, only the Blue Dragon Society had a grudge against the White Tiger Hall. As for the Black Tortoise sect and the Vermilion Bird Pavilion, one only liked to set up arrays and refine various mechanical parts, while the other only knew how to refine medicine. Therefore, they didn't have any grudges against each other. As the #1 assassin organization in the world, the Blue Dragon Society had a deep financial foundation, so they could afford to invite the Black Tortoise sect to help them so many times. Over the years, the Blue Dragon Society had killed countless people. Although they were only hired assassins, there were still some sects that hated the Blue Dragon Society to the bone. After so many years, the Blue Dragon Society hadn't been annihilated, and it could be said that the array was a big part of the reason why the Blue Dragon Society hadn't been wiped out. Originally, Chu Xiu's side was in an absolutely disadvantageous situation, but with the help of the array, he wouldn't be defeated for a while. At this time in the field, Ling Yunzi's body was shining with dazzling pure yang astral energy. He walked towards Chu Xiu step by step, and with every step, the pure yang astral energy under his feet was dazzling, but there was also the radiance of the stars shining, as if he was connected to the stars in the sky, condensing a layer of resplendent starry veil around Ling Yunzi. Astral steps. Lu Jiang, he called out in a low voice from the Blood Soul bead, and with a solemn expression he said, "Chu Xiu kid, be careful. The strength of this Taoist isn't that simple. Astral steps. Worship the radiance of the Big Dipper, and welcome the power of the gods of the stars. This is a secret technique of Taoism, and there have been many similar techniques among the branches of Taoism, but there aren't many that can really attract the power of the gods of the stars." Without Lu Jiang he saying it, Chu Xiu also knew that the strength of the Chunyang Dao sect's sect leader, who hadn't come out for decades, was infinitely close to the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm. Ling Yunzi slashed down with the pure yang as the sun, and the radiance of the stars circled around him. His entire body was like heaven and earth. That slash wasn't a murderous intent, but a kind of Dao operation rule between heaven and earth. It was like Dao connotation, but it could modify the rules within a few miles. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body was already pitch black, and only the great sun and the radiance of the stars were rotating in front of him, crashing down on him. Chu Xiu also didn't expect Ling Yunzi's strength to be at such a level. When he attacked, he already had a bit of the aura of a heaven and earth elemental enlightenment expert, who could control the power of heaven and earth. With a low shout, the peerless heavenly blade slashed down, and the endless demonic chi sword radiance scattered in all directions. The sea-breaking blade fell, and the extreme strength of the blade was even a little too much for the heavenly Dao warcase to bear, and there was a strange sound of mechanical movement. The blade of the seven limits tore the darkness in front of him apart, and the demonic chi and the pure yang chi intertwined and constantly exploded in midair. At this time, Ling Yunzi made a Taoist seal with his hand, and a strange syllable came out of his mouth. Taoist patterns appeared in the starry sky, and layer after layer suppressed Chu Xiu's body, instantly extinguishing the demonic chi around him. In less than 3 moves, Chu Xiu had already fallen into an absolute disadvantage. The surrounding people who were watching the battle were also amazed. Some of the older martial arts practitioners still vaguely remembered how amazing the leader of the Chunyang Dao sect, Ling Yunzi, was when he was young. Unfortunately, after taking over the position of the leader, he became more and more low-key, and even didn't appear in Jianghu anymore. However, it seemed that the past few decades didn't erase Ling Yunzi's talent and combat strength. Instead, it increased his realm by another half a step. It was estimated that it wouldn't take long for another supreme expert of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm to appear in the Dao sect. At this time, Chu Xiu could only consider himself unlucky to encounter Ling Yunzi at his peak. Chapter 892. Even Chu Xiu had no choice but to admit that Ling Yunzi's strength was almost unparalleled. He had half a foot in the threshold of the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Chu Xiu had fought with the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect many times, so he had a better understanding of the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect. For example, Zhang Yunzi was a standard warrior of the Chunyang Dao sect. His cultivation was above the word pure yang, and he had exerted the power of the pure yang gang qi to the extreme. Ling Yunzi's pure yang gang qi was not inferior to Zhang Yunzi's, but he was stronger than Zhang Yunzi in his comprehension of the word Dao. The Dao lineage cultivated the truth of the great Dao of heaven and earth, yin and yang, and all things. The pure yang lineage exerted the power of yang to the extreme, but the power of yang was also a kind of great Dao. Ling Yunzi's comprehension of the pure yang Dao was close to the level of returning to the natural state. If he comprehended the Dao, all the Daos would be in his heart. However, no matter how strong Ling Yunzi was, Chu Xiu would not allow himself to be captured. Moreover, Ling Yunzi was not strong enough to make Chu Xiu have no room to resist. The moment he was suppressed by the Dao power, Chu Xiu's body shone with endless blood qi, and the sky was filled with blood shadows that rushed toward Ling Yunzi. Chu Xiu had evaluated the blood shadow great technique as being extremely powerful among warriors of the same level. But its power would be greatly reduced when facing warriors who were stronger than him. Therefore, it was a martial technique with extremely low growth potential. However, although Ling Yunzi was strong, he had not reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm. The sky full of blood shadows attacked with all kinds of cultivation techniques, and the power was even more wild in the endless blood light. However, Ling Yunzi only gently stretched out a finger, and a golden light bloomed. The next moment, the golden light turned into scorching pure yang gang qi, and like the sun, it swallowed all the blood shadows. However, at this moment, as the blood shadows scattered, a small transparent figure directly attacked Ling Yunzi. It turned out to be a small person the size of a palm, holding a long saber. It was the figure of Chu Xiu. The small person carried an extremely strong primordial spirit pressure, and instantly passed through the pure yang gang qi. When Ling Yunzi reacted, it was already above his head. All along, everyone had been attracted by Chu Xiu's extremely powerful martial skills. After successfully cultivating the true fire body, everyone knew that Chu Xiu's physical body was extremely powerful. Therefore, many people had forgotten that Chu Xiu's attainment in primordial spirit secret techniques. The small person was formed from the purest power of the primordial spirit. There were no transformations at all. When the primordial spirit slashed down, Chu Xiu was betting on the fact that Ling Yunzi's primordial spirit was not as strong as his. In an instant, endless starlight shone in front of Ling Yunzi, but it was shattered layer by layer in front of the Qi's qi. Obviously, the star god's qi could not withstand such a strong primordial spirit power. Moreover, the primordial spirit was invisible, and it was extremely fast. Even if Ling Yunzi wanted to dodge, he could not. He sighed and pinched a seal with both hands. In his mind, endless pure yang gang qi bloomed, and the shadow of a sitting golden Taoist appeared. The golden light shone brightly, but this was not just pure yang gang qi, but also pure primordial spirit power. The battle of primordial spirit was more dangerous than the battle of ordinary gang qi and physical body. Strong primordial spirit fluctuations erupted because of the collision, and the incomparably strong force even formed a silent sound wave. The sound was so loud that some of the spectating martial artists even let out muffled groans, their minds shaken by this wave. Under the collision of primordial spirits, Chu Xiu's face turned pale, but he also took the opportunity to break free from the suppression of those Dao patterns. With both hands forming a seal, pure devil qi erupted from Chu Xiu's hands, and a devil qi longbow condensed in his hands. With one hand holding the bow, and the other holding the bowstring, the triple city extinguishing arrow burst out in an instant. Moreover, this was not the end. The moment the triple city extinguishing arrow was shot, the heavenly Dao war case in Chu Xiu's hand shook, and turned into the Ask the Heavens tyrant spear. The dense true fire of inner qi burned around Chu Xiu's body. When he thrust out his spear, he did not use the spear technique of the Black Tortoise True technique. Instead, he used pure strength, as if he wanted to tear the heavens apart. The pure Yang Dao sword in Ling Yunzi's hand slashed down horizontally. His movements were extremely slow, but there seemed to be countless afterimages. In the next moment, the afterimage transformed into 64 swords condensed from pure Yang astral energy, forming a pure Yang sword formation. Just as Chu Xiu's triple link city annihilation arrow was about to land, it enveloped him within. The powerful pure Yang astral energy completely negated the triple link city annihilation arrow's power of nirvana. In the past, Dugu Weiwei could destroy the entire Iron Emperor castle with this arrow, but that was because Dugu Weiwei had enough power to drive the almost endless power of nirvana. Now, although Chu Xiu's arrow was still overbearing, the power of nirvana was not endless. Under the strangulation of the pure Yang sword array, it was constantly being reduced. Ling Yunzi took a step forward, and his sleeves covered the sky. With a sudden swing, he felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. With a loud bang, it landed on Chu Xiu's heaven-seeking tyrannical spear. The heaven-seeking tyrannical spear formed by the heavenly Dao war case was smashed into pieces by the sleeves. Chu Xiu waved his hand, and countless mechanisms condensed into a long halberd in his hand. The great halberd smashed down crazily, but Ling Yunzi did not have a sword in his hand. He actually used his fists and feet to fight against Chu Xiu's strong body that had been tempered by the true fire. Even though Chu Xiu's Black Tortoise True technique was ever-changing, he still could not do anything to Ling Yunzi. The battle between Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi attracted almost everyone's attention. The battle between the two of them was what could be called exciting. Although Rama and Shang Tianliang were both at the mystic enlightenment realm, the battle between the two of them was actually quite boring. It was almost like a mad rush, then being slapped away, and then continuing to rush forward. On the other hand, the battle between Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi seemed to have unleashed all kinds of martial arts in the world to the extreme. Chu Xiu's current combat power could no longer be measured by the realm. Moreover, he had so many powerful martial arts, it was simply shocking. However, what was even more shocking was Ling Yunzi's side. When it came to martial arts, he had cultivated his extremely powerful pure Yang Gang Qi and various Dao sect's secret techniques to the extreme. He could completely crush Chu Xiu with just his strength. On the other hand, Chu Xiu took a different approach. He directly used the power of his primordial spirit to fight head-on, and Ling Yunzi was also not afraid. Although he had not cultivated the primordial spirit secret technique, the pure Yang Gang Qi of Chunyang Dao sect could automatically strengthen his primordial spirit while he was cultivating. No matter what Ling Yunzi's realm was, he would not be at a disadvantage if he fought head-on with the primordial spirit. However, what was even more surprising was that although Ling Yunzi's close combat attacks were not as varied as Chu Xiu's Black Tortoise True technique, his physical strength was also extremely shocking. Ling Yunzi's physical strength was also extremely shocking. Simply put, this person was in existence with no weaknesses. While Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi were fighting intensely, the other people on the battlefield were not idle either. Although there were fewer people on Chu Xiu's side, their quality was not bad. For example, Wei Shuya, Elder Wei. In the past, as one of the 5 great sky fiends of the 9th Sky Mountain, Wei Shuya was only a supporting character in the battle. His strength was also the weakest. It was only because they were like-minded that he became sworn brothers with the other 4. However, so many years had passed. Although Wei Shuya's cultivation had not reached the realm of Donghuang Tai, it was not too far away. In particular, his demonic arts inheritance was passed down to him by the other 4 of the 5 great sky fiends of the 9th Sky Mountain. Although Wei Shuya was now old and his qi and blood had stagnated, He would probably never be able to step into the mysterious heaven and earth realm in his lifetime. However, among those of the same level, there were still few who could match him. At that moment, Wei Shuya was surrounded by domineering demonic qi. He was fighting alone against 3 true fire spirit refinement realm martialists from Sabodhi Zen Temple. Previously, Wei Shuya had not fought many times. Even during the great battle on Floating Jade Mountain, he had not used his full strength. It was only now that Wei Shuya was fighting with his full strength that people could see how terrifying this person, who had been so famous in the past, was. Wei Shuya used several demonic arts one after another, and it was a feast for the eyes. Moreover, Wei Shuya's martial arts did not actually require weapons. However, at that moment, 3 weapons appeared in his hands one after another. The demonic sword was swung freely, and as the sword qi was wantonly, it seemed to cut through the void. As the demonic sword slashed down, it could be said to be domineering. An extremely powerful aura erupted from his seemingly frail body. Finally, the demonic spear shattered the sky, and that spear directly shattered one of his opponent's arms. Only some of the older martialists present could recognize that the weapons that Wei Shuya was using were the weapons of 3 of the 5 great sky demons of the 9 Sky Mountain. One of them did not use a weapon, and he was proficient in primordial spirit secret techniques. It could be said that Wei Shuya's existence was a continuation of the 5 great sky demons of the 9 Sky Mountain. He alone contained so many martial arts, and over the years he had probably mastered and integrated all these martial arts into one. If one said that Chu Xiu's Black Tortoise True technique had been forcibly integrated by that ancient martialist with his extremely strong martial arts attainments, then Wei Shuya's current existence was a continuation of the 5 great sky demons of the 9 Sky Mountain. Right now, Wei Shuya was relying on his longing for his 4 brothers and sheer willpower to treat their martial arts legacies as his own, forcefully merging them into his body. Wei Shuya did not rely on comprehension, but perseverance. It could even be said that if he had not chosen to integrate the martial arts of his 4 brothers back then, and had instead focused on studying his own martial arts, he might have been able to break through to the mysterious heaven and earth realm by now. Moreover, in the entire Yinma lineage, not only Wei Shuya was outstanding, but the people that Wei Shuya valued were also outstanding. This was the case with Chu Wuji. Chu Wuji's previous strength had reached the half-step real fire spirit refinement. He was definitely a top existence among the martial arts grandmaster. At this time, Chu Wuji also began to fight desperately. He actually took the initiative to find an old Taoist of Chunyang Dao sect. He fought real fire spirit refinement with real pellet state, and they were evenly matched. Chapter 893. Before Chu Xiu appeared, Wei Shuya focused on training Chu Wuji in the Yinma clan. However, compared with Chu Xiu, Chu Wuji had a shortcoming, that was he was not the orthodox descendant of the Yinma clan. Therefore, Chu Wuji could only be Wei Shuya's subordinate. He couldn't become the heir of the entire Yinma clan, and he couldn't be the face of the clan. Although the Yinma clan had little to do with the Kunlun devil cult now, the title was the title. If you didn't have this title, you couldn't sit in this position. But Chu Xiu was different. Although his identity as the orthodox descendant of the Kunlun devil cult was subject to discussion, at least it was recognized by everyone. Of course, Chu Wuji didn't want this position. He was a sensible person. After joining the Yinma clan, he saw the essence of the Yinma clan. Therefore, in the entire Yinma clan, he was only loyal to one person, Wei Shuya. Chu Wuji wasn't risking his life here for Chu Xiu. Rather, it would be more accurate to say that he was fighting for Wei Shuya. He was fighting for the benefits of Wei Shuya's bloodline. And right now, Chu Xiu was representing his bloodline. As a real pellet state, he fought against the real fire god refinement state. Chu Wuji was suppressed from the beginning to counterattack. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that if this person didn't die after this battle, he would definitely reach the real fire god refinement state. In addition to Wei Shuya, Lu Fengxian's performance was also extremely outstanding. Lu Fengxian's opponent was the junior's junior uncle Shi Yunzi of Chunyang Dao sect, who was the youngest disciple in the entire Chunyang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi's strength was originally unfathomable, and no one even knew that he had advanced to the real pellet state. For so many years, not only the people of Jianghu, But even the people of Chunyang Dao sect didn't know much about Shi Yunzi's strength. They all thought that the previous sect master was old and confused, so he accepted Shi Yunzi as his disciple before he died. In the end, when Shi Yunzi revealed his true strength, everyone was convinced of his strength. This person actually had a pure Yang Dao body, which was why he was more compatible with the pure Yang divine weapon. Even if he did not cultivate all day long, as long as he stayed in the atmosphere of the Chunyang Dao sect, his pure Yang Gang Qi would automatically accumulate, and his cultivation would gradually increase. It was just like cheating. Of course, Lu Fengxian was cheating even more than Shi Yunzi. Sometimes, luck itself was the greatest cheating method. These two people could be said to be the kind of existence that couldn't be measured by common sense. One of them held the pure Yang divine weapon of the former ancestor Lu, and the other held the unparalleled divine weapon of the ancient demon god Lu Wenho. Even their external divine weapons were extremely similar. Therefore, when these two people fought, they even displayed a power that made most of the true fire spirit refinement state cultivators feel ashamed. However, after the two sides fought for a long time, it was still Lu Fengxian who had the upper hand in the end. It was not because Shi Yunzi's cultivation was weak, nor was it because the pure Yang divine weapon was not as good as the unparalleled divine weapon, but because Shi Yunzi's fighting intent could not be compared with Lu Fengxian. Looking at Lu Fengxian, who was wielding the unparalleled divine weapon, and exerting the power of the demon god unparalleled halberd to the extreme, even his handsome appearance began to distort in the boundless demonic qi. Shi Yunzi was forced to retreat step by step. His hands were numb, but he could only smile bitterly. Lu Fengxian's fighting intent was unparalleled, but Shi Yunzi had no fighting intent. To be more precise, this battle should not have been fought in the first place. What was the current state of the Chunyang Dao sect? It was the weakest period in thousands of years. There was no new generation to take over, and the future was unclear. At times like this, the Chunyang Dao sect should have kept a low profile and accumulated its own strength, so that it could plan for the future. In the end, as the leader of the 6 spiritual masters, Chang Yunzi became enemies for no reason, and in the end he was killed. His death had indirectly agitated everyone in the pure Yang Daoist sect. They had no choice but to launch the righteous and demonic wars to kill Chu Xiu. Ling Yunzi was a sensible person, and so was Shi Yunzi. They were forced to participate in this war, and they had to fight even if they did not want to. On the other hand, on Chu Xiu's side, he swore to protect his own strength, and Chu Xiu was Lu Fengxian's brother who had gone through life and death together. How could he not fight to the death for Chu Xiu? It could be said that the will of the two sides were not even on the same level. It was too difficult to make Shi Yunzi as passionate as Lu Fengxian. Among the crowd, they were also surprised to see the strength that Lu Fengxian had displayed. In fact, this person was not very outstanding among the young generation. Although he had the inheritance of Marquis Lv Wenho, there were too many monstrous talents in Chu Xiu's generation. Just Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingjin, and Zhong Xian alone had attracted the attention of most people. There was also Ying Bailu, the unparalleled young master who kept a low profile but was even more famous, and Fang Qi Xiao, the sword Dao genius. Lu Fengxian had never fought for it, and his reputation had always been built naturally. It was not until now that the crowd realized that this person was actually so amazing. At the same time, some people who knew the inside story also shook their heads slightly. The stupidest thing that the Yu Palace had done was to use such an amazing talent like this as an object. Such a person was used to rope in, okay? It was a pity that Lu Fengxian was a good friend of Chu Xiu, and it was the kind of friendship that went through life and death together. If Chu Xiu couldn't survive this time, perhaps Lu Fengxian would also be buried in it. On a barren hill not far from the crowd, there was a high vantage point. It was also a good place to watch the battle, but there were not many people gathered here. The reason was very simple. This place had been occupied by someone, and it was someone that most people couldn't afford to offend. The Jianan king of Sword King City, Duguli, stood with his hands behind his back. Beside him, Fang Qi Xiao sat cross-legged, pretending to watch the battle carefully. However, when Duguli wasn't paying attention, he would take out an exquisite wine gourd and take a sip. 7th young master. What do you think? At this time, Duguli suddenly spoke, scaring Fang Qishao so much that his hand trembled, and quite a bit of wine spilled on his hand. This made him feel conflicted. Should he lick it or not? It seemed like he hadn't washed his hands after peeing just now. Hearing Duguli's words, Fang Qishao subconsciously said, "How else can I look at it? With my eyes, of course." Duguli glared at him. "I'm asking you, what do you think of this battle?" Fang Qishao hurriedly sat up straight, coughed, and said, "To be honest, in my opinion, this battle is simply inexplicable. Until now, no one knows why that old monk, Jingchan Jizong, wanted to kill Chu Xiao. This time, the Subodhi monastery didn't say anything about it either. They only used the excuse of killing evil demons. In any case, I don't believe it. If they really wanted to kill evil demons, would they have stayed in the moon-worshipping sect until now? Everything started from that inexplicable battle. Moreover, with Chu Xiao's personality, he will endure silently, but he won't swallow his blood. Therefore, revenge is inevitable for him. This battle is very normal." Duguli paused, then suddenly said, "I know that Chu Xiao is your good friend. From your tone, it seems like you're on Chu Xiao's side. However, seventh young master, you have to remember that you're the future successor of Sword King City. If Chu Xiao was still a junior of the Yinma clan, and you guys couldn't pull him away, we would have turned a blind eye. In any case, you've crossed the line more than once. But now look at Chu Xiao's power. How is he still a junior? He already has the attitude of a tyrant of the demonic path. From the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult until now, apart from the moon-worshipping sect and the 9 heavenly mountains' 5 great sky fiends, his power is the greatest. If you continue to be involved with him at this time, I'm afraid you'll attract the dissatisfaction of some righteous sections." Fang Qishao raised his eyebrows and said, "Ancestor, you're already so old. Why are you still like that bunch of ox noses from the Chunyang Dao sect? Why do you think everything is black and white?" Duguli said indifferently, "I'm not that pedantic. Even when I first stepped into the pugilistic world, I didn't believe in black and white stupid words. But you should know that in this pugilistic world, there will be evil, and there will be yin and yang. You don't have to choose black and white, but you still have to choose a side. Just like the 2 blades on the sword, you can only use one of them to hurt people. Right now, the righteous path's blade is sharper, so even if my Sword King City doesn't belong to the righteous path, we still have to stand on the righteous path's side. Unless Dugu Weiwei reappears and changes the situation, it's already clear which side my Sword King City should stand on." Fang Qishao's expression became a bit serious. He said in a deep voice, "Why must we choose? Can't my Sword King City choose our own path? Ancestor, you seem to have forgotten one thing. A sword is used to stab. Even without the 2 blades, it can still hurt people." Duguli glared at him. "You're talking back. If I tell you to watch, then watch carefully. Although that Chu Xiao's methods are indeed mysterious, and he is still able to revive after being blasted into smithereens, with Luo Mo's help this time around he will undoubtedly be defeated. Even if he is able to revive once more, the foundation under him will definitely be destroyed." Fang Qishao narrowed his eyes. "I don't think so. I understand Chu Xiao. He's never an impulsive person, nor is he someone who thinks too highly of himself. Since he dared to come here and accept the challenge, he definitely has more tricks up his sleeves. Although I don't know what he'll do, I don't believe he'll lose so easily. Ancestor, why don't we make a bet? If Chu Xiao survives this time, you won't be able to confine me for a year. I also want the Western Domain's Moon Pond's Drunken Moon grape wine to brew 100 jars. On the other hand, if I lose, I'll take the initiative to enter the Sword Pavilion and enter seclusion for a year to practice sword arts. What do you think?" Duguli looked at Fang Qishao in surprise. Why was he so confident in Chu Xiao? However, there were very few opportunities for this kid to stay in the sect and cultivate, so Duguli simply nodded and said, "All right, I'll bet with you." Fang Qishao looked in the direction of the fight between Chu Xiao and Ling Yunzi and muttered, Brother Chu, my year of happiness will depend on you." Chapter 894. Fang Qishao had confidence in Chu Xiao, but it did not mean that others had confidence in Chu Xiao. Many people could see that Chu Xiu's side seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. Ling Yunzi was suppressing Chu Xiu with his half-step heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm strength. Although the others could still have some advantages, Chu Xiu's side was not strong to begin with. Even with the help of the Blue Dragon Society's array formation, the lower-level warriors were already losing ground and could only barely hold on. Ling Yunzi's body shone with pure young starlight. With a casual punch, the powerful force sent Chu Xiu flying. Looking at Chu Xiu, Ling Yunzi said in a low voice, "What are you still holding on for? This battle should be over. If we continue to persist, it will only end in a situation where both sides will suffer. My Chunyang Dao sect will lose a lot of strength, but can you bear to see something happen to your subordinates? Can you bear to see something happen to your good friend, Lu Fengxian, who fought to the death for you?" Although Ling Yunzi had the upper hand at the moment, he did not look down on Chu Xiu with the attitude of a victor. He did not declare that he was the victor and ask him to surrender. What Ling Yunzi said just now was the truth. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, it would actually be a lose-lose situation if they really continued to fight. Even if they killed Chu Xiu and Chunyang Dao's sect regained its reputation, Chang Yunzi would not come back to life. More warriors would die in this third war between the righteous and demonic paths. Therefore, even if he stopped a moment earlier, he could still save a lot of losses. At this moment, Chu Xiu did not seem to panic at all. He merely said indifferently, "Who said that I can't hold on any longer?" Sect leader Ling Yunzi, "I'm afraid the one who can't hold on later should be you. Haven't you noticed that something is missing here?" Hearing this, Ling Yunzi suddenly realized something. For the first time, the expression on his face changed. At this moment, in front of Hudong County's vast Sun Peak, groups of Blue Dragon Society assassins wearing black clothes, black iron masks, and black iron conical bamboo hats were all gathered here. 90% of the martial artists in the Blue Dragon Society headquarters, and all of the elite martial artists of the 36 Big Dipper divisions were present, numbering in the thousands. All the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society were existences that had taken hundreds of lives in their hands. The killing intent on their bodies was incomparably dense. With so many people gathered together, it had even reached the point of affecting the weather. The vast sun peak that was originally clear and boundless was now covered in dark clouds, abnormally terrifying. In front of the Pure Yang Palace, a middle-aged Taoist priest looked at the dense black figures below and felt the soaring killing intent. He was almost out of breath by the powerful momentum. Didn't the sect master bring people to destroy the Blue Dragon Society? Then why were so many elites of the Blue Dragon Society still gathered here? Behind the middle-aged Taoist priest was a group of young Taoist priests. They were all clamoring to open the mountain gate and behead this group of villains. But at this time the middle-aged Taoist priest shouted angrily, "All of you shut up." This group of young Taoist priests were newborn calves that were not afraid of tigers. They knew the terror of the elite assassins of the Blue Dragon Society. With Ling Yunzi's departure, he almost took away all the elites in the sect. At present, there were only a few people left in the sect like him who did not have strong combat power. Usually they could only read Tao scriptures for some Taoist children and the like. Although the Pure Yang Palace, or the entire vast Sun Peak had countless arrays, but in the face of so many Blue Dragon Society assassins, although the array could operate automatically, its power could not be compared with its peak state. The middle-aged Taoist priest roared, "Quickly go and activate the array." Several disciples hurriedly went to activate the array, and in an instant, the entire vast Sun Peak shone brightly. But the complexion of the middle-aged Taoist priest was getting worse and worse. A part of the array in the Pure Yang Palace also needed to be controlled by people. But at present, there were only Taoist priests like him who had no combat power left in the Pure Yang Palace. There were also some young disciples who had not even left the mountain gate. How could they control this kind of thing? So after activating the array, the middle-aged Taoist priest immediately began to use a secret method to send a message to Ling Yunzi and the others for help. At the foot of the mountain, Duanmu Qianshan raised his head and looked at the vast Sun Peak. Perhaps even he did not expect that one day, the Blue Dragon Society would dare to attack the Chunyang Dao sect. Of course, it was not that the Blue Dragon Society had not done this before. Previously, Butianen even dared to attack the Great Light Temple. But that time it was purely because Butianen had gone crazy. This time, they only made their move after going through Chu Xiu's careful calculations. To be honest, Duanmu Qianshan had no idea in his heart whether he would win or lose this battle. Chu Xiu's side was a battlefield, and his side was also a battlefield. But the final victory or defeat still depended on whether Chu Xiu could hold on. If he could not hold on, even if they attacked the Pure Yang Palace, it would be useless. But now that Duanmu Qianshan had made a choice, there was no turning back. He took a deep breath and spat out a word. Kill. With a command, a group of assassins from the Blue Dragon Society killed in the direction of the Pure Yang Palace without saying a word. They were silent, but their eyes were filled with excitement and murderous intent. These people were the elites of the Blue Dragon Society. Each of them was like a killing god. Usually, ordinary tasks could not arouse their interest. This time, attacking the Chunyang Dao sect, if it was someone else, would definitely think that this was an extremely crazy thing. But for the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society, it was a challenge that excited them. At the same time, in the southern land, in front of the Subhuti Monastery, Rin Qianxiu led tens of thousands of phaseless demon sect disciples, 2 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses who had a good relationship with Wei Shuya, and some rogue demonic cultivators who had a good relationship with Wei Shuya. They directly besieged the Subhuti Monastery. This could be said to be the boldest thing that the Yinma clan had done in recent years. Last time, Wei Shuya asked Yi Xiaonan to retaliate against Subhuti Monastery in a fit of rage. In fact, he only attacked some small southern tribes that worshipped Subhuti Monastery. He didn't directly besiege Subhuti Monastery. Looking at the shining temple, Ren Qianqiu suddenly sighed and said, "In the past, when our holy religion was at its peak, the monks of the Subhuti Monastery had to bow their heads when entering and exiting the southern land. Now it has been less than 500 years, and we don't even have the courage to face the Subhuti Monastery." After sighing, Ren Qianqiu suddenly said to Mr. Lu next to him, "Lu Jin, do you think Chu Xiu can really lead our Yinma clan to regain the glory of the holy religion?" After Lu Jin stepped into the real pellet state, with his excellent means and strength, he had now become the mainstay of the phaseless demon sect. Hearing Ren Qianqiu's words, Lu Jin shook his head and said, "I don't know, probably no one can say for sure. However, Sect Master, countless outstanding talents have appeared in the Hidden Devil faction over the past 500 years. However, to be able to reach Chu Xiu's level and rise so quickly, there has never been anyone like him. Other sects have a choice, but we have no choice. Supporting Chu Xiu is our only choice." Ren Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yeah, since there is no choice, then don't hesitate to make a move. I want to see how strong the Subhuti Monastery has become over the years." As soon as he said that, tens of thousands of elites of the phaseless demon sect and the Yinma clan had already rushed toward the Subhuti Monastery. At this time, other than the old monks who were in closed-door cultivation, there was only Xiao Mok, who had just been blinded, and a few young disciples who did not have the qualifications to finish their apprenticeship. Of course, according to Subhuti Monastery standards, they were young. But in other sects, given their age, they would probably be the mainstay of the sect. But because of the particularity of the Subhuti Monastery, they were far from being able to roam the world. Sensing the demonic martial artists rushing up from the Subhuti Monastery below, Xiao Mok sighed. The Subhuti Monastery used righteousness to break evil, and joined forces with the world to attack head-on, not giving Chu Xiu a chance to breathe. But who knew that Chu Xiu's courage was bigger than they thought? He did not have much strength in his hands, but now he actually dared to split a part of his strength to attack the Subhuti Monastery. This was not just courage, it was simply madness. Xiao Mok could guess that there should be a strong force threatening the Chunyang Dao sect on the Chunyang Dao sect's side. Therefore, Chu Xiu was taking a gamble. He was betting on who would be the first to fall. He was betting on whether his side would be destroyed by the Taoist Buddhist alliance first, or if the Pure Yang Dao sect and the Subhuti Monastery would fall first. Currently, he was the only one in the true fire spirit refinement realm who was seriously injured in the Subhuti Monastery. The other old monks who were in closed-door cultivation had not shown themselves for decades, and Xiao Mok was not sure if they were dead or not. Moreover, things like the Subhuti monastery could not be disturbed. Only when they came out of seclusion would they be alive. If they were disturbed midway, it was possible that they would become dead. With just him and the young disciples in the temple, what could they use to block it? Xiao Mok sighed and said, "Send a message to the abbot. I hope they have successfully killed Chu Xiu." At this moment, the battle in the Blue Dragon Society's battlefield was extremely intense. Shang Tianliang was already on the verge of collapse. In fact, it was already a miracle that he could withstand Luo Mo's attacks for so long. He was even on the verge of risking his life. Of course, he was not risking his life for Chu Xiu, but for the people in Shang City who were still in Green Capital. Although Ling Yunzi had been suppressing Chu Xiu, he was still unable to completely take down Chu Xiu. Moreover, he also realized that something was missing here. There were a lot of people missing. Although Ling Yunzi had not stepped into the underworld for a long time, it did not mean that he really did not understand the news in the underworld. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan. Even if the Yinma clan was in a state of disunity, it was unlikely that the entire Yinma clan only had Wei Shuya and a few others who came to help. There was also the Blue Dragon Society. As the head of the four spirits, the Blue Dragon Society was definitely not weak. However, in the entire Blue Dragon Society headquarters, most of the warriors of the Blue Dragon Society were actually controlling the formation. What about the others in the Blue Dragon Society? What about Duanmu Qianshan? A guess rose in Ling Yunzi's heart, and he could not help but feel his heart immediately sink to the bottom of the valley. Chapter 895. Sometimes, things in this world are actually very interesting. The more you don't want something to happen, the more likely it will happen. Just as Chu Xiu's side was being suppressed to the extreme, the faces of the people from Chunyang Dao sect and Sabodi Monastery suddenly changed. They hurriedly went forward and passed the news to Ling Yunzi and Rama. After hearing the news, Ling Yunzi's face suddenly changed while Rama frowned slightly. Then, a Buddhist seal fell and directly blasted Shang Tianliang away. Seeing the gazes of the two people, Chu Xiu already knew that his plan had succeeded. The Phaseless Demon Sect and Duanmu Qianshan had already made their move. Chu Xiu laughed out loud. "Why don't the two of you tell me what the news is?" "All right, since you won't tell me, I'll tell you for you. The headquarters of Blue Dragon Society and the 36 Tiangang divisions have already made their move to besiege Chunyang Dao sect. I hope that the formation of Chunyang Dao sect is strong enough and can last long enough." At the same time, under the leadership of the Phaseless Demon Sect, the Yinma clan has already gone to the southern land to attack Sabodi Monastery. I heard that there are still many powerhouses in Sabodi Monastery who are in closed-door cultivation. Abbot Rama, you'd better pray that those powerhouses in closed-door cultivation are still alive. Otherwise, your Sabodi Monastery won't last long. As soon as this was said, the people present were in an uproar. As the saying goes, those who are closely involved can't see clearly. In fact, some people felt that something was wrong from the beginning. They even noticed that the power on Chu Xiu's side was somewhat different than Ling Yunzi's. However, they thought that this was the backup power that Chu Xiu deliberately kept, waiting for them to attack the interior of Blue Dragon Society before taking action. In the end, they only found out now that Chu Xiu actually divided such a small amount of power into three and secretly attacked Sabodi Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect. This was no longer just bold, it was simply gambling with their lives. Looking at Ling Yunzi and Luo Mo, Chu Xiu's face broke into a maniacal grin. "Abbot Luo Mo, sect leader Ling Yunzi, why aren't you saying anything? Strength was a good thing, so if one was not strong enough, they would be beaten. If I were to fight you head-on, even if I were to use all my resources, I would still be no match for you. My chances of winning are slim. But if you want to kill me, Chu Xiu, it won't be as simple as splashing blood all over my body. Now let's see who can last until the end. I've already given the order to the Blue Dragon Society and the Phaseless Demon Sect. After breaking through the Chunyang Dao sect and the Sabodi Monastery, they'll dig 3 feet into the ground and leave no one alive. You destroyed my future, so I destroyed your ancestral land. It's very fair, isn't it?" Now let's see if the two of you have confidence in your sect's formations. Let's see if you'll destroy me first, or if my people will destroy your ancestral land first. When these words were spoken, Ling Yunzi's expression turned extremely ugly. Even though Luo Emo still had an indifferent look on his face, his eyebrows were tightly knitted together. It was obvious that he was extremely furious. This move of Chu Xiu was simply a desperate and vicious plan. However, the problem was that not only was Chu Xiu's life at stake, but the future of the Sabodi Monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect was also at stake. What was the most important thing for a sect? It was very simple. It was inheritance. This inheritance didn't refer to the cultivation techniques recorded on paper or in the secret box, but to the people. If the cultivation techniques were destroyed, as long as the people were still alive, they could continue to be restored in the future. However, if a sect's younger generation disciples were all dead, even if they had cultivation techniques, where would they go to find so many suitable young disciples? Moreover, if even their ancestral grounds were destroyed, how would they have the face to see their ancestors? To kill Chu Xiu, they had to pay such a price. Was it worth it? This was something worth pondering over. Ling Yunzi took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Chu Xiu, do you know that the more you act like this, the more I want to kill you? Ruthless and vicious. It's definitely not a good thing for someone like you to appear in the devil path. You're already so difficult to deal with before you've grown to Yi Xiaonan's level. When you have Yi Xiaonan's strength, coupled with your ruthless methods, I'm afraid there will be no peace in Jianghu. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Sect leader Ling Yunzi, you're wrong. If it wasn't for the fact that I couldn't defeat you head-on, why would I use such an extreme method? If I had Yi Xiaonan's strength, I wouldn't have waited for you to attack me. Instead, I would have personally gone to Sabodi Zen Temple or Chunyang Dao sect to experience your martial arts. Ling Yunzi had said this to many people. It was normal to eliminate evil for Jianghu, but how many people were really willing to eliminate evil for Jianghu at all costs? In fact, in terms of threat, a supreme devil path powerhouse like Yi Xiaonan was undoubtedly 100 times more threatening than Chu Xiu. Although the old celestial master and Rama were defeated by him, if they really wanted to eliminate Yi Xiaonan at all costs, they might still have a chance if they fought with their lives on the line. But no matter who it was, they didn't fight with their lives on the line. Therefore, it was obvious that people were selfish. Even if Ling Yunzi wasn't selfish, Chunyang Dao sect would be too. At this time, Shi Yunzi was no longer entangled with Lu Fengxian. When he heard this news, he immediately used a secret communication method to contact Chunyang Dao sect. After getting more detailed information, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted at Ling Yunzi, Senior brother, stop fighting. The vast Sun Peak has been breached. Right now, everyone is defending the Pure Yang Palace, but the formation of the Pure Yang Palace won't last long. In fact, the people that Chu Xiu sent to the south were stronger. There were all the martial artists of Phaseless Demon Sect and Wei Shuya who were on good terms with them. But at least Sabodi Zen Temple still had Xiao Mo, and the power of the formation was strong enough. But Chunyang Dao sect was really without a leader, and it was on the verge of destruction. Ling Yunzi let out a long breath and said, One move. Give me time for one more move. Before he made a move, Ling Yunzi actually didn't want to fight this battle, because there was no benefit to winning or losing. But if his Chunyang Dao sect retreated like this, not only would there be no benefits, but it would also be a waste of time and effort. He would lose so many people, and he would lose his reputation. As the sect leader, other people could easily give up. But once Ling Yunzi made a decision, it was not so easy to give up. As Ling Yunzi's voice fell, the pure Yonggang Qi bloomed around his body, but he didn't know when. But a black figure surrounded by an extremely gloomy and tyrannical aura walked out from behind him, holding a long sword in his hand. The shape was exactly the same as Ling Yunzi's pure Yongdao sword, but it was condensed by evil qi. Everyone present was suddenly stunned. What was going on? The sect leader of Chunyang Dao sect actually cultivated demonic arts? When Shi Yunzi saw this scene, he suddenly thought of something. His face suddenly changed and he murmured, Senior brother, you still haven't let go of that matter? In the entire Chunyang Dao sect, only Shi Yunzi knew why Ling Yunzi had been in closed-door cultivation, ever since he became the sect leader. It was not only to balance the various forces in Chunyang Dao sect, but also because he had once suffered from qi deviation. It wasn't a problem with his cultivation, but an inner demon. Back then, Ling Yunzi destroyed a diabolism sect with his own strength, and he killed every single one of them. This incident became a much-told story among the righteous Dao sects. But in fact, only Ling Yunzi knew that he had killed the wrong person. Not everyone in the diabolism was evil, but most of the righteous Dao sects were hypocrites. How many of them were truly kind? There were too many causes and effects in this, and it was hard to explain. However, in that battle with Ling Yunzi, he killed those who should be killed, and those who should not be killed, he also killed them. Although that battle brought him great fame and glory, it also brought him a lingering inner demon that he couldn't get rid of. Therefore, after taking over the Chunyang Dao sect, he began a long period of closed-door cultivation. It was called cultivation, but in fact, he was suppressing the inner demon. At first, Shi Yunzi thought that after so many years his senior brother should have completely crushed the inner demon, but he didn't expect that he still hadn't let go of that matter. However, this inner demon was completely suppressed by Ling Yunzi, and he could even use a part of its power. In all things in the world, if there was yang, there would be yin. Pure yang was righteous and pure yin was evil? Ling Yunzi couldn't figure this out. On the contrary, if he did, his faith in Chunyang Dao sect might collapse. The inner demon was born from his body, and its power was also his negative power. One righteous and one evil, one yin and one yang, but they formed the most basic great path in the world. Ling Yunzi and his inner demon attacked at the same time, and the two swords affected the power of the entire world, the purest power of yin and yang. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed. If someone was watching from afar, they could even see that the dark clouds in midair and the sky had condensed into the shape of a Tai Chi diagram. This sword attack shocked everyone. This was definitely the power of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. Even Rama didn't dare to underestimate such an attack. In that instant, Chu Xiu's body immediately shone with a crimson light. The blood-red light seemed to connect the sky and the earth, and the huge pillar of blood that erupted could even be seen from more than 10 miles away. Lu Jianghe, who was in the blood soul bead, was already numb. He was the one who created the blood demon transformation technique, but he hadn't used it even once. Instead, he let Chu Xiu use it here frequently. With the eternal demon pill, Chu Xiu could be considered to be extremely unscrupulous, and he used this kind of life-risking technique without thinking. Under the endless blood-red light and demonic aura, Chu Xiu's sword slashed down. The void stagnated, and the momentum of the sword seemed to penetrate the world. Many people had heard of the power of the red dust ethereal slash. After all, it was a sword technique passed down by Dugu Weiwei in the past. With one slash, Ling Yunzi's Taoist connotation shone brightly, and he unleashed his power to the extreme. Finally, he broke free from the shackles of the sword. However, Chu Xiu's sword did not stop at all. Following the gap between the power of yin and yang, it directly slashed at Ling Yunzi's inner demon body. Although the power of yin and yang was the great path of the world, and represented the ultimate balance, Ling Yunzi's body could not achieve true balance. His inner demon body was obviously weaker than his original body in terms of power. Under the ethereal slash, the inner demon body continued to collapse, but Chu Xiu's body also continued to explode under the attack of the pure yang sword aura. However, under the effect of the eternal demon pill, it rapidly healed. This was like a tug of war, and it was obvious who would be the first to give up. Chapter 896. The fact that Chu Xiu was able to fight Ling Yunzi to this extent had actually exceeded many people's expectations. There were too few people who watched the battle between Chu Xiu and Chang Yunzi after his rebirth. Although the news had been leaked, the few people present did not reveal the outcome of the battle in detail. Therefore, even though the people of the pugilistic world knew that Chu Xiu's abilities had improved greatly after his rebirth, and that he had cultivated his body with true fire, they did not have a direct understanding of his realm. It was only then that they saw how powerful Chu Xiu was. If it was a life and death battle, even the top 10 on the leaderboard would have to consider if they would be killed by Chu Xiu. Under the ethereal slash, Ling Yunzi's mental demon incarnation shattered with a loud bang. Ling Yunzi spat a mouthful of blood immediately, and his face was extremely pale. Although the mental demon was a mental demon, it was Ling Yunzi's mental demon, and it had used his power. Now that the mental demon incarnation had been shattered, it was equivalent to Ling Yunzi being heavily injured. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu was in a worse state than Ling Yunzi. Although he had the eternal demonic elixir, which allowed him to resist the pure yang sword chi's attack with his body, in reality, the blood demon change technique and the eternal demonic elixir had almost drained all his energy and chi and blood. The reason why Chu Xiu could still stand there and confront Ling Yunzi was because of his willpower. If he were to collapse now, all his previous acting would have been in vain. Ling Yunzi wiped the blood from the corner of his lips. His aura was extremely weak. However, for some reason, although his aura was weak, it faintly harmonized with heaven and earth. Looking at Chu Xiu, Ling Yunzi coughed and spat another mouthful of blood before saying, "Although you've severely injured me by killing my mental demon incarnation, you've also helped me. Who can really tell if it's right or wrong karma? Chu Xiu, from today onwards, karma will be put aside for now. Whether it ends or there will be a battle in the end, it's all up to fate." With that, Ling Yunzi waved his hand and called the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect and the entire Dao sect lineage to leave. He was already heavily injured. Moreover, if he didn't leave now, the Chunyang Dao sect would really be breached by the Blue Dragon Society. That would be a huge problem. Everyone else present had different expressions on their faces. Some of the true fire spirit refinement realm cultivators could already tell that Ling Yunzi was about to make a breakthrough. In the past, Ling Yunzi was also an outstanding figure in the Chunyang Dao sect. The reason why he was unable to make any progress in the past few decades was because of his inner demon. In the end, Chu Xiu killed Ling Yunzi's inner demon in this battle, which indirectly helped Ling Yunzi. Although he was currently heavily injured, once he recovered from his injuries, he reckoned that stepping into the heaven and earth profound opening realm would be a matter of course. Therefore, in this battle, although the Chunyang Dao sect couldn't kill Chu Xiu to avenge Chang Yunzi, it indirectly helped Ling Yunzi to make a breakthrough. Nobody could tell whether this was a loss or an advantage. Of course, to Chu Xiu, even if he knew the final outcome would be like this, there was nothing he could do. Ling Yunzi's strength was too strong. He had already reached the half-step heaven and earth profound opening realm. If Chu Xiu attacked his body, he might not be able to seriously injure him. On the other hand, it was much easier to kill the incarnation of the inner demon that was connected to him. Moreover, once the incarnation of the inner demon was destroyed, Ling Yunzi would be the one injured. Therefore, even if Chu Xiu knew that doing this would help Ling Yunzi, he could only do it. Without the Dao sect's attack, the pressure on Chu Xiu's side was greatly reduced. Rama shook his head gently and spat out a word. "Go." As Rama led the people from the Sabodhi monastery and the Buddhist sect to retreat, the people on Chu Xiu's side instantly heaved a sigh of relief. They were practically defending against an enemy that was several times their number. Even with the protection of the Blue Dragon Society's sect-protecting formation, the pressure was still somewhat unbearable. It could be said that if the Chunyang Dao sect hadn't retreated first and held on for a little longer, Chu Xiu's men would have collapsed. Seeing that the people from the Dao and Buddhist sects had retreated, everyone present was dumbfounded. Chu Xiu won? No, this wasn't considered a victory, but he had survived this calamity. The Sabodhi monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect had to retreat without achieving anything. This result was already shocking enough. On a small mountain in the distance, Fang Qishao chuckled at Duguli. "Patriarch, what did I say? I still won the bet this time." "Ha ha ha." Duguli said expressionlessly, "When we return to Sword King City, go into seclusion in the Sword Pavilion for half a year. Not only do you need to cultivate your sword Dao, but you also need to tame your character. You're going to take over as the sect master in the future. If you can't even hide your emotions, how will that look?" Fang Qishao stared at Duguli dumbfoundedly. "Patriarch, I think I won the bet just now, right?" Duguli looked at him and said plainly, "You won, but I didn't keep my word. Let me teach you another lesson. In this pugilistic world, either you're stronger than others or you're more shameless than others. You're not as strong as I, and you're not as shameless as I. Then scram back and cultivate in seclusion." When Feng Qishao heard this, he looked like he had eaten **T. Moreover, he had swallowed it back after vomiting. At this moment, Chu Xiu glanced at his subordinates. Almost all of them were injured, and the number of casualties was not small. These people were Chu Xiu's elites from the Suppression Martial Hall and Guanzhong Torture Room. With so many casualties, it was enough to make Chu Xiu's heart ache. Of course, this wasn't the time to feel heartache. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Seal the mountain gate and inform Duanmu Qianshan and Mr. Ren of the phaseless demon sect to retreat immediately." Sabodhi Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect had already returned to defend. If they didn't leave now, it would be interesting if they met people from these two sects on the way and got wiped out. After ordering everything in an orderly manner, Chu Xiu immediately brought his men back to the Blue Dragon Society. He began to seal the mountain gate and treat the injured. Mei Qinglian walked over with a face full of exhaustion. Just as she was about to say something to Chu Xiu fell into her arms. Mei Qinglian was shocked. She hugged Chu Xiu and shook him. She said loudly, "Hey, are you going to die again?" One couldn't blame Mei Qinglian for being nervous. Chu Xiu was a little too terrifying now. His aura was extremely weak. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't even be able to sense his vitality. Wei Shuya quickly walked over to take a look. He heaved a sigh of relief. It's okay. He just used up too much energy. If it was someone else like him, they would have been crippled. However, this kid has the eternal demon pill in his body. It can protect his true spirit. As long as he has enough time, he will recover. Hearing Wei Shuya's words, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Right now Chu Xiu was their backbone. If something really happened to Chu Xiu, they really wouldn't know what to do. On the other hand, Chu Xiu had sealed off the Blue Dragon Society. However, the storm in the Jianghu hadn't passed yet. The Taoist and Buddhist sects had such a huge formation, but Chu Xiu had survived it. Moreover, he had done it in such a way. It did sound a little unbelievable. However, the others couldn't help but admire Chu Xiu. If it had been other forces, they probably wouldn't have done what Chu Xiu did. It was as if they had gambled with their lives. Although Chu Xiu won in the end, Chunyang Dao sect and Sabodhi Monastery suffered some damage. However, it wasn't serious. Most of the damage was on the formation. They came back in time. Chu Xiu also retreated in time. Apart from this, there was also a huge change on the wind cloud list. The biggest change was the change in the number 1 position on the wind cloud list. It changed from Ming Sanshu of the Ying clan to Ling Yunzi of Chunyang Dao sect. In the battle with Chu Xiu, Ling Yunzi's strength was undoubtedly revealed. He was definitely only half a step away from reaching the mysterious heaven and earth realm. After Chu Xiu destroyed his inner demon incarnation, it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the mysterious heaven and earth realm. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to the heaven and earth illumination realm. Hence, his title of number 1 on the leaderboard was well-deserved. Moreover, he wouldn't be able to sit on this position for long. After all, he would have to stay on the sovereign leaderboard after breaking through to the heaven and earth illumination realm. The one who changed the most was Chu Xiu. He was placed 6th on the wind cloud list by Wind Sweeping Tower. In fact, no one could tell Chu Xiu's true combat strength. He had too many trump cards. No one knew where his limits were. In any case, most people thought that Ling Yunzi was stronger than Chu Xiu in the battle with Ling Yunzi. Chu Xiu risked his life and only managed to kill one of Ling Yunzi's inner demon incarnations. If the battle had continued, it was hard to tell who would be the winner. However, Ling Yunzi didn't have time at that time. If the battle had continued, Chunyang Dao sect would be in danger. However, what troubled Wind Sweeping Tower even more was how to deal with the mysterious heaven and earth realm existence that Chu Xiu found. Logically speaking, one would be qualified to be listed on the sovereign list once he entered the mysterious heaven and earth realm. However, it was only a qualification. It didn't mean that everyone in the mysterious heaven and earth realm was qualified to be a martial arts world supreme. After all, the prerequisite to becoming a martial arts world supreme was to have a force that could stand at the peak of the underworld. So what was Shang Tianliang? Was he a member of the hidden devil clan or a secluded expert? These were all mysteries. They didn't even know Shang Tianliang's name. In the entire underworld, the only people who knew Shang Tianliang's background were Lu Chonglu and the others. However, those who knew Shang Tianliang's background didn't say a word. Lu Chonglu didn't say a word because he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. If he did, it would only add to his troubles. Meanwhile, Granny Flower Ghost didn't say a word because she returned to the Rakshasa sect after leaving Green Capital. The conflict between the Central Plains warriors was too far away from her. As for why LV Zhanlu and Helian Changfeng didn't say a word, it was because they had their own plans. To them, since Chu Xiu could enter the Green Capital space again, and even abduct a mysterious heaven and earth realm existence, they might be able to do it too. Therefore, during this period of time, they had been researching in this area. They wanted to see if they could get a heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm fighter to be their bodyguard like Chu Xiu. Of course, if they really managed to bring another mysterious heaven and earth realm powerhouse out of Green Capital, they might be the first ones to regret it. After all, not everyone in Green Capital was as special as Shang Tianliang, and had something to worry about. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.